Alright folks, John Rush here today, my son Richard Rush behind the camera. This is the review of the new Lexus IS200t. Okay, the IS is not new, but the 200t is. This is a new turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, produces 241 horsepower. It's an in-house turbocharged intercooled engine. It's a twin scroll unit. It works really well as long as you're not at a stop. I'll talk more about that when we get into the driving portion, but real quick, let's do a walk around of the vehicle. Pretty standard on IS. This is the F Sport version, which frankly I love. It adds $3,500 to the price of the car, which this car comes in at $44,235. This particular F Sport gives you the exterior design, which I really love, different grille and so on, LED lamps, 18-inch rims, TFT instrument cluster, heated ventilated seats, different shift knobs, pedals, inside, a backup monitor. I love the F Sport. Is it worth the extra money, the $3,500? Well, Richard and I both have talked about this many times. I feel that it is. I think the value down the road and having the F Sport and being able to resell the car is actually worth spending the extra $3,500. I like the way everything looks, the trim levels and so on, or the way the trim apportionments and such are. You'll have to be the judge of that though. This is a really good looking car, got a lot of great comments on it, especially in this red color. I will say, really a nice car. I love the way it looks. I love the way it handles. I'll talk about the driving and the performance of it when we get into the driving section. But while we're back here, tell you what, I've got the key fob in my pocket. You just push over here. There's a little button, pushes up. It's not an automatic trunk. Real quick, let me take the net down for you so you can actually see the trunk a little bit better here. So, you know what, fairly spacious trunk. You know, you can get a couple of suitcases back there, a couple of sets of golf clubs. Not bad for a small sedan. Now, small sedan, $45,000, so it's a luxury sedan at $45,000, but still, really good room in the back. I love this cargo net thing that they put in here. This is an option about, real quick, this is an option of $65. The actual mat in here is $105. It gives the ability, though, where it's basically a big pocket where you can put groceries, things like that, without having things bounce around inside. So again, really a great design. I love the fact that the seats actually fold down, so you get some pass-through if you'd like. So if you've got some skis, snowboards, things like that, you can fold the rear seat down. Speaking of the rear seat, let's just hop in it and I'll show you how much room. So I've been driving this car 5'10". That's what this front seat is set at. So when I climb in, I've actually got more than enough room in here, a full, you know, hand width of room in between here. So really plenty of room. Nice apportionments in the back. Couple of vents back here is all. There is no power ports, anything along those lines. But again, this is really a 4-passenger. I mean, there is room, I know, for 3 back here, but really it's a 4-passenger vehicle as far as adults are concerned. You know, this is not going to be your family vehicle. It's just not going to have enough room to do car seats, things along those lines. Richard, my son, they actually own one of these cars, and I think they would be the first to attest that probably one of the things that they move out of as they start to grow into a family is the car they have now, because again, there's just not a lot of room in this back seat if you're hauling passengers, car seats, things along those lines. If you're 2 people or a single person traveling, commuting, things like that, fantastic vehicle. In fact, as far as that goes, me personally, one of my favorite buys. Easy to park, easy to maneuver. I'll talk more about that in the driving portion. Let's hop into the front seat. All right, we're now in the front seat. 2016 Lexus IS200t, T standing for turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. And this is the F Sport version. So real quick on the F Sport, Richard can show you the door panel over there. You'll notice some of the carbon fiber look, soft touch material. Again, not going to get into a lot of details on the interior of the IS, because we've done that before. It does have heated and ventilated front seats, which in this hot summer months that we have right now here in Colorado, the black leather, the ventilated seats are great. One complaint I have with this interior, and you can just see it right now when I put my hand back, they've got cup holders back here, which are great, they're adequate, but when you're trying to get a coffee cup out, you literally almost have to turn your head to pull a coffee cup out. I really wish somehow these cup holders could be up front somehow and they'd move some of this back. Lexus, if you're listening, this is really cumbersome. I mean, it works, maybe it's the only place you can put them, but it really is inefficient the way it's being used. It has a console, but frankly, there's a quarter in it, and that's about all you're going to get in it. No, I'm not exaggerating. There's just not a lot of room in there. There is a USB power port and a 12-volt power outlet. Your modes to control everything, Eco, the normal mode, and the Sport are all controlled right here with this knob, and it does have what I consider to be one of the best systems when it comes to the nav and using the audio, etc., all right here with this basic mouse that you put your hand on. Now, that part of it, I will say, is positioned great. but as you can see, the way my arm lies, if there's something in the cup holders, you're actually kind of coming over here off to the side. The cup holders are just in the wrong spot. I don't know how else to say it. So Lexus, if you can change that, that's the one knock I have in this car. I know it's limited on space, but that's a knock. The rest of the vehicle, or the rest of the interior, pretty standard. One thing that you are paying extra for on this vehicle is, believe it or not, you pay for the steering wheel, $150. Lexus, I don't know why the wheel is not just included into the F-Sport package. It should be. Up the price another $150 or whatever you need to do, and put the wheel in with the F-Sport package. I don't know why I'm having to pay extra money for a steering wheel to go along with the F-Sport package that's already here, that you've already paid for. This car also comes with a $600 option of blind spot, cross traffic alert, and heated outside mirrors, which in the winter months would be great. Now, speaking of winter months, I'll talk about this a little more in the driving portion, but real quick, the 200T available only in a rear wheel drive only. So the heated mirrors, great option for an all-wheel drive car, but frankly, this car in the snow, rear wheel drive only, probably not your best choice. Speaking of taking a drive, let's just go do that right now. All right, folks, a couple of other things I want to mention before we start driving the car. So the 200T, and part of why we're doing this inside is because it's really hot out this morning, partly why we're doing these reviews in the morning, because the afternoons it just gets blazing hot here in Colorado. We're really in the middle of July right now, so anyways, just as a side note. So the 200T, 241 horsepower I mentioned earlier, 8-speed automatic transmission, which actually works very well. You can actually, there's an indicator up here in the dash, I'll show you in just a minute, where you can actually see where you're at as far as gear selection goes, especially if you're in the sport mode. One thing about this engine is it has the variable valve timing that's intelligent, which actually makes the engine, it switches between an auto and an Atkinson cycle engine. So you'd have to go look that up to know exactly what I mean by that, but basically it can adjust the intake timing, if you would, to change how the engine actually operates. They do that for fuel efficiency. So speaking of fuel efficiency, I've averaged just slightly under 30 miles to the gallon in this car. So Richard hasn't driven it a lot, so he hasn't killed my fuel economy, but I'm averaging almost 30 miles to the gallon. Not bad in a really kind of a performance car. The only complaint, again, and I'll talk about this as we start driving, and I'll show you this even, the lag on the turbo. And it's substantial, to the point where if you're not paying attention as you're pulling into traffic or pulling around a left-hand corner, for example, you really have to be aware of how much lag is there. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself T-boned. And I'm being very serious on that. You have to really be careful just getting used to how much it takes for the turbo to spool up. Is this my engine of choice? I think you're already hearing that it probably isn't. I'd rather have the 3.5 liter if it was me. I love the fuel economy, but I would sacrifice fuel economy for instant power, unless the aftermarket or Lexus can get that turbo lag out of the car. Going through the rest of this interior, though, pretty standard on the Intune system. Not going to show you a lot of things there. Everything is controlled right through the knob. Pretty standard. We showed you that in a lot of the different Lexus models. So if you're really curious about that, there's videos specific just for that. We've done lots of reviews on it. I would encourage you to go look at the reviews, but it's a great system. We love it. Everything else is controlled. I will say this, it's all within hand's reach. They've done a good job of that. Just the cup holders are my only other complaint. So one cool feature about the IS, and we've showed this before, you hit this button here on the steering wheel, and it slides the speedometer and RPM, the tachometer, over. You can see my 29.1 miles to the gallon, and if I want to scroll through some things, I just hit this button on the side over here, and I can scroll through from radio to whatever settings I want for the car, to fuel economy. And when I'm in the fuel economy, I can scroll through different things there and figure out where the gear selection is, tire pressure, what the turbo's actually doing, and so on. So kind of a cool thing. It's just interesting how the way they make the actual dial slide back and forth. Kind of a cool feature. I think they stole some of that, Richard, from the LFA model, if I'm not mistaken. He's shaking his head yes. And of course, it does have paddle shifters right here. So with that, let's take a quick drive. I'm going to leave it in the normal mode. So as I hit the normal mode right here, I am in normal. Now, right here from a dead stop, there's nobody in front of it. I'm just going to show you real quick. I'm going to mash the pedal, and you're going to see how long it takes for the turbo to actually spool up. There, I'm finally going after we get up to about 4,000 RPM. Now, I'm going to stop. I'm going to put it in the sport mode, and we're going to see if it actually changes it much. And frankly, it doesn't change it a ton. It does a little bit, but not a ton. I'm about the same from a dead stop. The only way to get rid of that, real quick, just for those of you that maybe are going to buy one of these and drive it, if you're going to make a left-hand corner, you better power brake it some, get your turbo spooled up, then it's actually the actual and I skid. Actually just kicked in for just a second because the front wheel started to, or the rear wheel started to spin. At any rate, or I should just say the wheel started to spin. One thing to keep in mind, the turbo lag on the car is substantial. I know it's hard to tell that when we're actually driving, but I think it's worth noting. And again, not a major complaint. Would it keep me from buying the car? No. If I like the fuel economy, I would buy this car, but it's just something you should note, especially if you're used to driving something that's got instant power, which in today's world, there's very few cars that have that sort of a lag. So is that a problem in my opinion? It's software and it can be changed, by the way. So Lexus, if you're listening, you can get rid of some of that turbo lag. A lot of other manufacturers use turbos and they don't have that much lag, so it's doable. You can get rid of it. It's a matter of whether you want to program in that or not, and maybe they're doing some of that to save drivetrain. Don't know exactly how or why they're doing it, but just something to take note, just something to be aware of. Interior noise, and I'm going to pull over here and give you the rest of our opinion real quick before we get too much more sun. Interior, nice. Typical IS Lexus interior. They've done a great job. It's comfortable. The seats are comfortable. It's sporty. It handles well. Interior noise on a scale of 1 to 10, it's definitely not down in the 1 or 2 as far as, 1 being the low end of the spectrum as far as quietness, 10 being noisy. It's probably a 5, somewhere in that neighborhood. Not bad. It's not a bad car to drive as far as interior noise goes. I wish it was a little quieter, but it's a small sedan, so you got to keep that in mind as you're driving it. Everything else about the car I love, so if you guys are thinking I'm knocking it just because of the turbo, keep in mind you can buy this car with the other engine options in it and get all-wheel drive, which frankly, in our area here in Colorado, I would buy the 3.5 and all-wheel drive vehicle just so you can get around in the snow. That's just me personally. Some of you out there looking at the turbo, though, you may love the extra fuel economy. If so, go check this vehicle out at your local Lexus dealer. When you do, tell them John and Richard Rush from Drive Radio sent you.